Hello, and thank you for tuning into this Ingerati Studio interview at Asian Utility Week 2016. I am Denise, and with me in the studio is Stefan Padberg, and you are the MD at RWE New Ventures. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to be focusing a lot, obviously, on innovation and startups within the Asian region. And I wanted to ask you, my first question would be, what is RWE's New Ventures Innovations Division's interest in Asia? Give me a little bit of insight into what you're doing here and what your aim is.
So this is actually the first time we're in this conference, and it's really about foraging. We want to find out if Asia is one of the markets that we need to be doing more of our innovation activities in. We are currently in hotspots, so we are in Tel Aviv, we're in the Silicon Valley, we're in Birmingham. So we're in regions where it's very clear who the leader in innovation is and where an ecosystem already exists. And in Asia, there's so many people, there's so many hotspots. I mean, you could call Bangkok a hotspot, you could also say Hong Kong, you could say Singapore are the hotspots. So we really want to find out where we should be and if there is a potential for us to be. What's also very important for us is innovation for us is a means to make money, rather than to dance our names backwards and draw PowerPoint presentations. So we need to be really careful on the location that we choose, and that's one of the reasons why we're here.
Okay. Are there any, this is only the second day of Utility Week, the second and the last day, but have you picked up on any exciting trends within the Asian market?
Absolutely. I think I've seen quite a lot already. In cities like Singapore, I think smart and connected becomes very, very relevant. Also, electric vehicle charging may become relevant in the not too distant future, which is something that RWE is a market leader in. So that would be very interesting for us to also come into this market. I think when it comes to more developing countries, I think yesterday in the panel somebody mentioned Myanmar as one of the examples. There's currently people coming onto the grid rather than a European trend where people are leaving the grid. And it's going to be very interesting to find out what sort of grid this will be. Is that going to be a microgrid? Is that going to be a nationally funded big grid as we see it in the European or in the Americas right now? So there's a lot of interesting questions that need a lot of answering.
Yeah, sounds like it. What does innovation in the energy sector look like in your company's view?
That's fairly easy to answer, so thanks for the easy question on this one. We need to disrupt ourselves. So if you look at companies that are very successful today, there are companies that are brave enough to completely disrupt themselves. I always like to quote the example of Apple, where they have just developed an iPod, and then minutes later they suddenly come out with an iPhone that makes the iPod useless. Because if you have an iPhone, you don't need an iPod in theory anymore. Yeah, and there's people in this company that make the decision, we are coming out with something new that's going to make something else that we invented abundant. This is something that's not in the DNA of a utility. We have always done the same thing very successfully for hundreds of years, really, and disrupting ourselves was not part of it. So our mission as an innovation activity within the company is to disrupt our own company.
So your company has obviously embraced innovation. We've written articles on it already, and you're a very forward-thinking company. But is innovation, in your opinion, encouraged and developed here? What is your view of Asia and innovation?
It really is. I think if you look at Asia, there's a couple of market segments where in fact they have jumped the gun. So if you take a look at how we in the Western world have experienced IoT and the internet, we sat in front of outdated computers and we typed in web pages. This hasn't really happened in Asia that much. They have jumped that evolution step and they have gone mobile right away. So people in Asia are used to apps rather than sitting in front of a computer. And we in Europe, or also in America, we are just making the conversion from computer-bound internet to mobile internet right now. We are going from Internet Explorer to the app. And I'm thinking that a lot of this could also be true for the energy environment in Asia. So they may jump, some of the mistakes that we have made in Europe. They may even jump some of the evolution steps that we are going through. Battling with the regulators on some things that may seem in the best interest of the customer but really are outdated. Some of these things don't exist in Asia, and utilities have an opportunity to thrive on new business models here right away.
Yeah, and create new revenue streams for themselves, right? when it comes to innovation, there's always going to be challenges, I think, from both sides, whether you're the innovator or the utility, perhaps, considering a startup or a particular innovation. Do you think that the challenges here in Asia, when it comes to innovation, are different from those experienced in Europe, for instance?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. I think it's very culturally driven as well. I mean, just how do you deal with failure is one of the questions that comes to mind when you think about innovation. So even in utilities in Germany, in the United States, failure is not very well accepted. But if you are in an environment where speed matters, where innovation matters, it's trying out things and understanding that some of these will work and some of these won't work. So to confront people in Asia, in the Middle East, in Europe with failure is going to have a very different reaction than in other parts of this world. And there is a challenge, I believe, for people in Asia to accept that they are trying out something with the outcome being a total loss or a failure, while still thinking they have done a very good job.
Right, okay. Do you think that Asia has a lot to learn from Europe and the States, for instance, with regards to accepting innovation and developing it? And likewise, do you think that Europe and the US have a lot to learn from Asia? Have you picked up any commonalities?
Yes, exactly. I would never go as far as to say, Asia needs to listen to what Europe or the United States does. I think that's what utilities would have done not too long ago, but I think that's an outdated model of thinking. I believe that, we are working together very closely with companies that have looked into design thinking approaches. So you ask yourself a question, and then the first thing that you do is you verify if that's even the right question to ask. I think such agile topics are very well connected into Asian thinking mentalities, and to an acceptance that's generally available in Asia. So I think every part of the world has its very unique challenges and its very unique answers and strengths. And I think that's something that we in RWE are trying to do. We're trying to set up a program called the Global Accelerator for Utilities, the Global Accelerator Program. And we want to have utilities, non-competing utilities from Asia, from Europe, from the United States in a joint program, so that we can all learn from one another. And I think that's one of the topics that we really need to accelerate in the best word of the best meaning of the word.
So what is RWE's next step from here?
Well, you tell me. No, kidding. I think one of the next steps is to identify the innovation hotspot that we need to be in Asia. And I think currently a couple of hotspots are competing to become the prime innovation hotspot in Asia. As soon as to us it becomes more clear which one this is going to be, I think RWE needs to be here, needs to participate in growing markets, in growing revenues in this part of the world as well. And take the learnings from Silicon Valley, from Tel Aviv, from other parts of the world that we're active in. Obviously we're in Berlin because that's our main hub as well, and in our own country. Those learnings and apply them in Asia, and then jointly with utilities from Asia try to monetize on these learnings.
Fantastic. My last question to you, it's a double question. What would be your advice to the energy sector here in Asia? And I know it's a wide region, but just in general, what would your advice be to the region? And what would be your advice to startups and innovators wanting to enter Asia?
Sure. So let's start with an advice to the region. I have heard a lot that the things that we are currently looking at and developing in the United States and Silicon Valley in this innovation hotspot, they don't apply to Asia. So because utilities here are in a non-liberalized market, they still have their own area. If you look at Hong Kong, there's a duopoly. There's only 2 utilities that are really looking into the customer base, if I'm informed correctly, but I think that's the case. Why should they change? Why should they move on? Why should they do the next thing in energy? Because their business models are still intact. My advice would be that we thought the exact same thing 15 years ago, and look what has happened then. Nobody would predict that the German government would shut off nuclear power plants because of a tidal wave that hit Japan. That was not really on our agenda, and that affected our market and our business model significantly. I'm not even judging if it was good or bad. It just happened, and I guess what I'm trying to tell people in the region is that things like that, a total disruption of their markets, could happen at any time. And if they use the time that they have right now with existing business models with high revenues today to prepare for the future, I think they are in an excellent state to, also look into a very bright future of the utility industry in Asia. But if they don't do anything, it could get challenging in the future.
It sounded nice. Stefan, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Half a day left.
Yes, I will. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning into the session. If you're wanting more insight into Asia Utility Week, please go onto our playlist, which is on our website, ngerati.com. Thank you.
Thanks.